Hello and welcome. Just a quick content warning, there will be no graphic images in this video, but I am going to be mentioning abuse and murder just in case you might find those topics triggering. If you'd like to follow along every week, please feel free to subscribe and share your theories. I'll have Mare of Easttown videos out every Monday. Kate Winslet stars as Mare, a detective sergeant of a small town called Easttown, and it's typical of a crime show set in a rundown town. There's an addiction problem, everybody knows each other by their first name, and Mare has a relationship with a lot of people who tend to call her personally instead of the police for their issues. We learn that there is a potential prowler peeping Tom type around town, and that people are also still grappling with the disappearance of a woman named Katie who has been gone for a year. And while the police have no leads, Mare thinks that Katie has long passed away, especially given her history of addiction. By the way, the show reminds me a lot of Broadchurch. If you like dark small town murder mysteries, I'd highly recommend that show. Mare lives with her mother, daughter Siobhan, and her grandson Drew. When Mare's own son died by suicide and his girlfriend was in the thick of her addiction, Mare took Drew in. We also meet Erin, a really sweet teen mother who's having issues with her overly aggressive ex-boyfriend Dylan and his new girlfriend Brianna. The co-parenting is not going well. Erin also has a really bad relationship with her father, who is really angry that he's having to support her son. He was so aggressive, I was sure that he was going to hit her, this poor girl, but he doesn't, at least not that we know of or in that scene. She is scared of him though, and she walks on eggshells, and she's very apologetic around him. She does meet a boy online though named Brendan, and they start texting, and after around 3 weeks of chatting and getting virtually close, she and him decide to meet. Erin is really excited because she's going on a date, and it's really sweet. She has this kind of family vibe with her best friend Jess and Jess's mother, and it's just nice to see her be happy and be a teenage girl. Sadly, it doesn't go well for Erin though. She arrives at this party to meet up with Brendan, and it turns out that it's Brianna, Dylan's aggressive girlfriend, and her friends who had catfished Erin, pretending to be Brendan. They're waiting for her there and they ambush her, and Brianna beats her up quite badly while Dylan and the group watches, and of course these are teenagers, so they're recording it. It's really the kind of ghoulish teenage behavior that honestly made me cry, and it was very upsetting to watch. Luckily, Siobhan, Mare's daughter, is there, and she helps Erin to her feet and offers her a walk or a ride home, but Erin just says no and she runs off into the woods. Meanwhile, that evening at a bar, Mare meets a man, a writer named Richard, who's just moved to town from Syracuse. She's reluctant to talk to him at first, but they end up having a conversation. They even spend the evening together, but she decides she wants to take off and not spend the night. He wants to ask her out, but she's not really interested in any more than that, so she leaves. And on her way home, she catches a glimpse of what could be the prowler, and she calls it in. The first episode ends with us seeing Erin's partially clothed body in a creek the next morning. In episode 2, a jogger finds Erin's body, and after Mare is called to the scene, she then has to go and inform Erin's father, Kenny. He doesn't take it well at all, obviously. So now I get that sometimes we can take people for granted when they're around, and we can sympathize with his grief, but he was absolutely terrible to Erin on her last day, and probably for their whole relationship. She was really scared of him, and he made her feel like a burden. So yeah, I kind of hate the guy. He tells Mare that he's certain that Dylan is the one who killed her, and he says that Dylan hated Erin for having the baby, and he never wanted the child. We then meet the new assistant detective, Colin, played brilliantly by Evan Peters, by the way. He's brought on to help Mare with the case. And eventually everybody gets brought in for questioning. All the teenagers who were in the woods that night, Dylan, who is extremely unemotional, though he says he didn't kill her, and obviously Brianna, who is just so aggressive. She fits very well into this town of miserable and unlikable people. She even says to Mare, well, no wonder your son took his own life. So yeah, she's bad news. There is a subplot about Carrie, Drew's recovering addict mother, who is living in a halfway house. And at this point she's recovering, so she wants full custody. She's filed the paperwork, but Mare is determined to do everything she can to keep her grandson Drew. Richard calls and asks Mare on another date, and in the call he mentions the death of Erin and how sorry he is about it. He tells Mare that they're really lucky to have her. I'm guessing the police force or the town in general. Yeah, I don't know about this guy. I sense red flags, but we'll get to that. So Mare agrees to go on this date. Well, it's actually some kind of book signing function, and Richard sees her there, and He kind of says hi from a distance, but for the most part, he ignores her and carries on talking to a bunch of people, women. Mare does wait around for a little bit, but she eventually decides to leave, and that's when he comes running after her. Ugh. And he's all, I didn't know you were the jealous type. He's apologetic, and she goes back in with him, which is really disappointing, because he's gross. By the end of the episode, Kenny, Erin's father, shoots Dylan, meaning to kill him, for supposedly killing his daughter. And Erin's best friend Jess confesses that Erin told her something and swore her to secrecy, that Dylan is not actually the baby's real father. Jess suspects, although Erin would never say, that the baby is actually Frank's, who is Mare's ex-husband. By episode 3, Kenny very easily gives himself up, saying that he shot Dylan, who actually does survive. Laurie tells Mare about Frank being the possible father, and Mare goes over to Frank's, and everyone at the house overhears that he lied about knowing Erin, and Mare loudly asks if Frank slept with her. Obviously, I should point out that depending on the age of consent, it would be more appropriate to say that it would be statutory rape or abuse, because even if Erin thought she was consenting, she absolutely couldn't. So it just feels kind of inappropriate to say they slept together or had sex, because you don't describe abuse in that way. Frank swears that he never abused her, that he just helped her out with some formula and some nappies at some point when she told him that things weren't going very well at home. He's even willing to give up a DNA sample, so he seems fairly confident that he's not the father. He also has an alibi for the night of her murder. He went partying with friends, and later one of his friends, John, brought him home and he passed out. So over the course of this investigation, Mare finds out that Erin's last call was placed at 5 to 11 the night of her murder. She's suspected of being murdered between 12 and 2, I think. And this call was placed to Mark, the deacon at the local church. When he's questioned, he says that he was at the church with Peter all night. By the way, Peter is Mare's cousin, and he's also a kind of priest at the church, although Peter hasn't corroborated this yet. Mark, the deacon, tells Mare and Colin that he had a relationship, that's the word he uses first, and then he says it was a friendship between him and Erin, because she was once in the church youth group, and if any youth group member called him late at night looking for help, he would pick up. He's suspicious as all heck, but he does hand over his cell phone right away. He does say to Mare and Colin that he feels that Erin was really upset, there was some kind of betrayal. In fact, he didn't really get a lot of details from her, but he kind of just told her God bless or something. On their next date, Mare opens up to Richard about her son. See, now I don't know if this guy is just interested in Mare's life because, you know, that's what happens when you like somebody. You're interested in their life and you ask questions, or if that's just really suspicious. Just to be safe, I'm going to say it's suspicious. He offers Mare some advice on how to deal with the Drew situation. So yeah, he's kind of in there. By the way, there's also a very cute relationship blossoming between Mare's daughter Siobhan and the local radio station presenter, and it's just the only really innocent and good thing happening on the show, so I have to mention it. Colin tells Mare that there is a tip that the Deacon Mark, was transferred from one church to the church in Easttown. So they go to his home to try and question him about it, but he avoids them, pretending that he isn't home, even though they see that the lights are on and we see him hiding behind the curtains. We know, of course, that there are so many instances where church leaders are suspected of or accused of abuse, and instead of the church alerting the authorities, the church decides to sweep it under the rug and they transfer the offending priest to another church. I'm kind of hoping at this point that Peter, Mare's cousin, is not complicit in some kind of shady church cover-up because he seemed like quite a nice guy. By the end of the episode, Mare is placed on administrative leave because she tried to take drugs out of the evidence room and plant them on Drew's mother in her desperation to keep Drew. Her boss comes by to confiscate her badge and her gun, and she's off the Erin case. We also see in a scene that creepy Deacon Mark takes Erin's bike from the back of his car and he throws it into the river. As for my theories, first let's take a look at Richard. We know that Mare left his house after they spent the evening together, so we don't know where he was or what he was doing between 12 and 2. He's also a new person in town, which makes him a likely suspect. That's the only real reason I have, and it's quite a weak one. It's more likely that he's just in town trying to do research on Mare and the people of the town for his new book. Next we have Dylan, Erin's ex-boyfriend. There's something seriously wrong with this character. He's very unhappy, constantly irritable, kind of aggressive as well, and the way that he reacted when Brianna was beating Erin up, this guy is not at all bothered by violence. He does have an alibi for the night of Erin's murder, but I wouldn't be surprised if he saw something or if he knew something. Next is Frank. Obviously, I believe that someone close to Erin might have murdered her. This is usually the case, so Frank seems like a likely suspect. He lied about knowing her for some reason, and there's just something murky in that story. He pretty much has an airtight alibi, but we still can't be sure that nothing untoward happened between him and Erin. Erin's father, Kenny, on the one hand, it was really easy for him to shoot Dylan with the aim of killing him. Whether he'd be able to kill his daughter, I really don't know. They had a really bad relationship, but I don't see murder. He doesn't have an alibi for the night of the killing, though. Also, I believe it was someone close to Erin, so this could have been him. Next, we have Deacon Mark. This is the obvious suspect on the show. He was seen throwing Erin's bike into the river, but I don't know. I feel like at best he could be covering for somebody. The suspicious circumstances in which he was transferred to Easttown, though, stand out, obviously. The fact that he did seem to have a close relationship with Erin, and he was the last person to hear from her, very suspicious, but I don't know if 3 episodes in, they're already going to give us our killer. He's already committed a crime though because he's hiding evidence, so he's guilty anyway. And finally we have Brianna. She's very aggressive. She absolutely hated Erin, so I could see this happening. She actually got interrupted earlier on in the woods, so who knows, maybe she went after Erin to finish the job. I do believe if she did do it though, she might have had some help, or she was helping somebody else. Because she refuses to talk when she's brought to the station, we don't even know if she has an alibi for the night of the murder. And yeah, that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching.